Right now, there's no player in the NBA you'll hear more differing takes on than Rudy Gobert. The dude just won his 4th Defensive Player of the Year award, and he anchored the best defense in the league by far last year. So how is Rudy Gobert this controversial?
Well, he's really good at one thing and he's really bad at the other thing. Like, he is one of the best defenders of all time. On the offensive end, let's just say he's limited.
Right. Before we start talking about how controversial Rudy Gobert is, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on any new videos. So before we talk about Gobert and how he's controversial, let's mention this is just on the court. Like, off the court, nothing has really happened, just besides that COVID thing. And in hindsight, like, yeah, it was dumb, but that's not really something I'm gonna hold against him.
It made him look more like stupid than like a bad person or anything. It's just kind of one of those moments where it's like, dude, why?
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
On the court, though, it's crazy to hear the takes about him. I mean, this video kind of came from Shaq's comments recently. He was asked, who is the WOT player? So worst of all time, the opposite of the GOAT. And the first person that came to his mind was Rudy Gobert. What?
I get where Shaq is coming from, because he's like, well, when you get paid that much money, it's like you get the big contract, you go for a massive trade haul like this, you're expected to perform. But like, I mean, Ben Simmons is sitting right there. Or even like fat ass Raymond Felton. Yeah. Like, come on, there's better options.
I mean, to be fair, Ben Simmons was mentioned right after that, so yeah, that makes sense. But there's a lot worse NBA players than the guy who's won Defensive Player of the Year 4 times. And then Dwight Howard recently, also on a podcast. I mean, these NBA player podcasts are out of control. He said he didn't think Gobert necessarily deserved all these Defensive Player of the Year awards, and he wasn't as critical, and he could just be salty because Dwight's got 3 of those, and Gobert's now got 4, but his reasonings were he's a great team defender, and he's 7'2", so it's easier for him. Don't get how that makes any sense whatsoever.
Oh, it's easier for Lamar Jackson to run the ball because he can run a 4.34. I'm so sick of these, like, well, what if we take away a player's, like, best trait? Yeah. Then what are they? It's like, I don't know, if you make Shaq 6'1", would he be in the NBA? No, he'd be an accountant.
Right. And to add on to that, Gobert recently, last year, was voted the most overrated player by a poll of unanimous NBA players. So it's clear to say NBA players really don't like this dude.
Draymond hates him.
Yeah?
Said as much on like the broadcast during the NBA Finals. And I mean, players are knowledgeable about the game. I mean, hell, they do it for a living, but I mean, we've seen plenty of NBA takes over the years from former players. I mean, Gilbert Arenas, just turn on any one of his podcasts, skip to a random point, and there's like a 1 in 3 chance he's making a bad take. Also, just recently, Nick Young saying everyone's afraid to admit that Kyrie Irving's better than Steph.
What?
It's like, no, he's not. He's just not.
Yeah, and regardless though, the opposite side is kind of like the basketball nerds or like reporters, even some front offices. They adore Rudy Gobert, and we'll talk about the advanced stats later. Like, advanced stats love Rudy Gobert, and I think it's fair. I mean, there's some guys I respect a lot. I know Kenny loves Rudy Gobert too. Like, some other reporters you see, they'll reference him. And really, it's just like crazy to see the vast difference in opinions. Like, sometimes you'll get that the NBA players kind of love that dog mentality, don't really care about the advanced stats, where reporters and kind of like dudes on Twitter will love advanced stats and don't really care about that dog mentality. But I have never seen a player with just vastly different takes from each side.
I mean, maybe like Jokic 5 years ago.
That's a good point.
Before he won the championship, like when he won the back-to-back MVPs, and all the nerds on Twitter were like, no, he's the best center of all time. And people were like, okay, well, he needs to actually do something. He's since done something and validated it, but like just the vitriol you get from all sides about Gobert is way worse. So first, let's get the negatives out of the way, and I mean, the big one is he's not a good offensive player. Yes, he averages 14 points per game on 66% shooting, but unless he's within 3 feet of the rim, the dude's not shooting the ball. I mean, there's a reason why we were all like blown away when he hit a fadeaway jump shot over Jokic in the playoffs last year, because it was literally something we thought was impossible.
I mean, I think it's fair to call him a liability on offense. Like, who could forget 2 seasons ago when Ant didn't have a dunk through 8 games, and he was like, there's no room, like it's all clogged up, and they have since Hornets work through that. Like the Gobert and Cat partnership works because Cat can shoot the ball and he can be out in the perimeter while Gobert's inside, but it is still a thing. And the other thing that I think really is a negative that isn't even his fault, but just hurts his reputation is the massive haul it took to get him. And he's paid a lot of money. Like first, the haul we've talked about so many times, just talked about in our Timberwolves video, and it looks a little bit better now, but still, Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Leandro Balmoro, Jared Vanderbilt, Walker Kessler, who was just taken in that draft, 4 future picks and a pick swap. I think the only recent trade I can think of that's more was the Kevin Durant trade, just because the Nets actually got back some good players. But the fact that those 2 deals are even comparable shows how crazy this trade package was.
Yeah, Bridges might have been a little more too, but again, like same level. It's like, we said this in previous videos about Gobert, like I don't think the Wolves are regretting making that trade, but it's like when you buy the house for $1 million and you could have got it for 800,000.
Yep.
Like you moved in, you got the fam moved in, you love it, you got the big backyard, everything's nice, but you could have got it for cheaper.
And the other part is that contract. It looks a little bit better now because dudes have gotten deals recently where they're making more, but
because NBA players just keep getting paid.
Getting a lot of money. I wish I was in that league. $43 million next year. He has a player option in 2026. Definitely picking this up for $46 million. That makes him the 15th highest paid player in the league going to next season. Some people might think that's fair. I mean, for what he gives on defense, that might be fair, but that is a lot of money to be giving, what, your second or third best player? And I think if he didn't get this massive trade haul to go get him, and he wasn't getting paid all this money, like imagine if they traded like 2 first-round picks to get him, and he was making $25 million, people would be like, oh, he's a steal.
Yeah, he's a bargain.
He's incredible. It's not his fault, but at the same time, you do gotta live up to those expectations.
Yeah, you're judged against like what it takes to get you, whether that's a trade or a contract. It's why a lot of people were harsh on Jaylen Brown this whole season because he got that massive extension in the offseason, which again, it's not his fault. If the Celtics put that contract offer in front of him, he's gonna sign it. So that's on the Celtics. But yeah, when you come with the big price tag, you gotta produce.
Now on to the positives of Rudy Gobert. I mean, just straight up, the dude is one of the best defensive players in NBA history. There's no caveat to that. It's just a fact at this point. He's tied with Dikembe and Ben Wallace for the most defensive player of the year awards at 4. And he's consistently led top defenses. Of course, the Timberwolves last year, the best defense in the NBA by far. And sure, there he had Jaden McDaniels, you had Ant, you had Mike Conley, you had other guys like Naz Reid off the bench that could help him. But go back and look at that Utah team, like especially in 2021. I mean, he had Mike Conley there as well, but dude single-handedly basically led that to a top 3 defense in the NBA. And if you look at the advanced stats, and you got to take these with a grain of salt because goddamn, we don't even know what half of these even mean, but that 2021 run was crazy. Had the highest defensive Raptor ever, the best defensive plus minus since they began tracking that in 1996, the highest D LeBron ever.
The highest what?
The highest D LeBron. You don't follow that?
You made that stuff.
I honestly did not. That is real. Like, we don't know what this means, but NBA front offices, NBA nerds do take this into account. It means something, and he's basically at the top of all of these.
And I mean, if you want to look at the eye test throughout the advanced stats, like he's still a very good defender. I mean, he's not often going to lead the league in blocks. He was only 6th this past year, but he alters a ton of shots. He constantly deters players from getting into the paint. The big criticism of him has always been that if he gets switched out on the perimeter, he's not very good. I mean, this was a big problem in the 2021 playoffs. I mean, people were saying like, oh, the Clippers are just exposing Rudy Gobert, getting him switched out onto like Paul George or Reggie Jackson, and they're just cooking him. And Gobert wasn't great in that series, but he has gotten a little bit better at it, I think. It's been circulating around on Twitter this past playoff. Someone actually went and checked all the times he got switched onto the perimeter, and he held players to 6 of 21 shooting, which for a big is really, really good. Problem for Rudy is everyone just remembers the one against Luka in game 2 where Luka completely cooks him and hits the game winner, which it's unfortunate for Rudy because the actual stat gets buried, but that's going to be the one everyone remembers.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing, like that Clippers series, like it was just one series, and I don't even know the exact stats from that series. He could have been fine on the perimeter, but just that was the reputation. And then this year he was really good, but the Luka one kind of taints it.
And I mean, a lot from the Clippers series was just the fact that the Clippers were shooting really well from 3.
Yeah, they were. Reggie Jackson was playing out of his mind that series. So in closing, like, dude is an insane player. He's just limited. Like, we just made the video on Trae Young. Kind of similar in the fact that, like, Trae's amazing on offense, ass on defense. Rudy Gobert, amazing on defense, ass on offense. And I would probably say, like, I'd rather take Rudy Gobert. He's probably easier to build around. You know, defense in the modern NBA is very important, but they're kind of similar. And really, I think the main thing that taints him, I just mentioned it, is the contract in the trade. You take that out and Gobert's praise, everyone's like, oh, this dude's insane. But because of that, you know, people take that into account and it kind of hurts his rep a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see why some players think he's a little overrated. I think for Defensive Player of the Year awards, when you have guys like Bam and AD and Wemby, who personally I think are better defenders, who can switch. I mean, they could still hold their own on the interior and they can play well on the perimeter, but that's 3 guys in the entire NBA. Like, and again, let's switch this around. Like, imagine criticizing a point guard because they can't defend a big in the post. Right. We're criticizing a center because he can't defend guards on the perimeter. Like most centers can't do that. Yusuf Nurkic can't do that.
Hell no.
Joel Embiid struggles with that. Like, plenty of like the slower, lumbering centers, which Rudy is one of, can't do that. And that's okay. You got to scheme around that. You got to be able to keep him down low and not get him switched. That's on the coaching staff, not on Rudy.
So what do you guys think? Where do you rank Rudy Gobert in the NBA right now and as an all-time defender? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like. And hey, while you're here, check out some of our other content as well. And don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.